Greetings and welcome to Cookery with Mason Storm. On today's episode we're going to look at making some ginger cookies. More specifically, we're going to be making ginger snaps. Of course, there's multiple ways to make these. Some are more snappy than others. Some are a little bit more chewy. Our ingredients for this recipe consist of 2.5 teaspoons of baking soda, 1 tablespoon of ginger, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 egg, 1/2 cup of molasses. I'm using standard molasses, not a blackstrap. 1 cup of butter, 1 3/4 cups of sugar, 2 3/4 cups of flour, and of course our secret ingredient, 1/8 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Now let us begin the cooking process. So I got my mixing bowl here, dumping in the flour. And then I'm going to go look around and see if I can figure out where I put my sifter. Oh, there it is. Now to sift my baking soda, because we don't want any chunks of baking soda in this because that tastes terrible. And then we'll throw in our cinnamon, our salt, and our ginger buster. And there was a couple little kernel things left, and it's good that it's not in our cookies. Now it is time to combine the ingredients. And what better tool to combine ingredients than a whisk? So I'll use the whisk to combine the ingredients, and then I'll stop once they're combined. Of course, now it's time to do the more moist ingredients, the wet stuff. So we'll start with our butter and our sugar. Although I guess sugar isn't very wet, but it's pretty standard to combine sugar with butter. Now, something you might want to do that I didn't do that would be probably fairly smart would be to soften up your butter a little bit. Give it a couple seconds in the microwave so that it's not a solid mass like I have here, because this is not mixing at all and is just a source of frustration. My solution to this, though, I thought was pretty creative, and so I heated up my molasses, and then when I poured my molasses in, it kind of softened up the butter a little bit. Something to be said about hot molasses. It kind of reminds me of an old Burt Reynolds movie. Of course, she mixes up a lot easier with some hot molasses. That softens the butter right up. But we got one more moist ingredient to add. And that, of course, is our egg. And once the egg's added, now we can start mixing more vigorously. Making use of that wooden spoon to ensure proper consistency and removal of lumps. Some of the butter is still a little bit lumpy at this stage. Maybe my molasses wasn't hot enough. Either way, with a little bit of work, it all starts to kind of combine. Of course, one ingredient was forgotten at this point. Our cayenne pepper. So we'll add that in now. It was supposed to go in the other half with the dry stuff, but now's as good a time as any. Don't want to forget it. Better late than never. Now that proper consistency is achieved, it's time to move on to the next stage, the final stage in the creation of the batter for our delicious ginger buster cookies. So we have our dry stuff and we have our wet stuff ready. So we're just going to simply mix in the wet stuff to the dry stuff. Preferably, you want to mix the dry stuff into the wet stuff, but for whatever reason I used the wrong bowl at the start, and I determined it was easier just to continue on than it was to correct the proper bowl size and shape. And I don't think I made a mistake in this, but it is what it is. And of course, to get the maximum amount of wet ingredient removed from the bowl, I'm using a whisk. Using the old-fashioned technique of rubbing it against the sides of the bowl for removal. Of course, normally I do partial mix-ins, but when you're pouring your wets and your dry, it's not as big of a deal to overdo it. So that's why I just kind of dumped everything all in at once and just started mixing away. And just keep mixing until it all starts combining into one heterogeneous mixture of perfection. We want this to all be nice and combined so our cookies don't taste like flour, because that would be bad. And now that we got that kind of sorted out, it's time to move on to the next step. Now we will be actually making our cookies. So I have a pan out here, a sheet pan, just have a sill mat on it. If you don't have sill mat, use either parchment paper or butter to make sure that the cookies don't stick. And I'm just taking a little bit in my hands, kind of give them a little bit of a roll, get them into a ball shape, and laying them out on the sheet. Now this isn't going to be the final step because there's still a little bit more I'm going to do with this. But this is a way of getting kind of the right sizes and spacing as far as the cookies go. Because it's more important that they're all the same than it is that they're a particular size. Because if they're all the same, they should all cook at the same time and then all is good. Also, you want to keep them small enough that they don't all run into each other. And now that we have all of them, I got my bowl of sugar here and I just roll them in the bowl of sugar. And then I put them on the pan and then I get a little bit of a press on top. And this seems to work good for getting them to spread out somewhat evenly without overlapping on the pan. A little bit more and we're almost done. I think I had another 2 sheets after this one that I made with this recipe this size. Into the oven we go, 350 degrees, approximately 8 to 12 minutes to cook them. And if you cook them a little bit longer from there, you can actually get them a little bit more crispy. So you do the minimum cook, you have a nice, soft, chewy cookie. Cook it longer, you get a more snappy type of cookie. They're very soft when they come out of the oven, so you can't really use that to determine when they're ready. So just keep an eye on how they look, and you should be okay. Let me know in the comments below how you make your gingerbread cookies. And if you like this video and like my content, feel free to like and subscribe. And until next time, stay awesome.